Welcome to HOA Nuisance Files. Keep your phone ready for this one. I am standing in my own driveway in Billings, Montana, watching a tow truck back up toward my car, and Kathleen Jones is waving a boot clamp key in my face like it is a badge of office. She is yelling that my guest parking decal is fake, and I have until tomorrow to pay or my car gets towed. I moved here 6 months ago for a fresh start. I am a nurse in a busy clinic, and my mental health has been fragile. The harassment is pushing me to the edge. The Redwood Landing Ridge Association seemed perfect when I signed the lease, quiet streets and mountain views. But the moment I pushed back on a single parking notice, selective enforcement ramped up like I had declared war. Kathleen is the gate access administrator, which means she controls the access codes, the guest passes, and apparently decides who gets towed. She is a middle-aged white woman with gray hair pulled into a ponytail, wearing a purple windbreaker and a pink bucket hat. And she has a glove box envelope of certified slips she waves around like ammunition. Right now she is screaming that I parked in a fire lane last week, which is a lie, and that my decal expired, which is another lie, and that the compliance hotline logged 3 violations under my address, which I never received. I take my phone out and start recording. She gets louder. "You do not build to my standard, you pay to my standard," she says, jabbing a finger at my chest. That is her catchphrase. She has said it twice already this month. The tow operator is a tall guy in a reflective vest, standing back near the truck with his arms crossed, listening carefully. He does not say anything. Kathleen turns to him and says, "Boot it first, then lift it if he does not pay by noon tomorrow." The operator nods slowly, like he has done this 100 times. I look at the decal on my windshield. It is valid. It has the HOA logo, the month sticker, and the guest pass number. I say, "This decal is valid. I registered it online 3 weeks ago." Kathleen laughs and says, "I do not need proof. I have paperwork and vibes." I blink. Paperwork and vibes. That line is going to haunt her. I pull up my email on my phone and show her the registration confirmation. She does not even look. She says, "Photos do not count." I say, "This is not a photo. This is a confirmation email from your own system." She waves the boot clamp key and says, "If it is not in my log, it does not exist." The tow operator leans forward slightly, watching. I can see him taking mental notes. Kathleen pulls a clipboard from under her arm and flips through pages. She says, "Your address has 3 open violations. Fire lane parking on the 14th. Guest overnight without a permit on the 19th. And this expired decal today." I say, "I was never parked in a fire lane. I do not have overnight guests, and this decal is not expired." She taps the clipboard and says, "Then explain why the hotline logged all 3. That is when I realize the compliance hotline is not a hotline. It is Kathleen. She is writing her own complaints and calling them violations. I do not say that out loud yet. I take a photo of the clipboard from 5 feet away. She yells, "Stop that." I say, "You just told me photos do not count, so what is the problem?" She steps closer and the tow operator shifts his weight. The sky is getting darker and the wind picks up. A few fat raindrops hit the concrete. Kathleen says, "You have until tomorrow at noon to pay the fines, $450 total, or your vehicle gets towed and you pay storage on top." I say, "What fines? I never got a notice." She pulls 3 certified mail slips from the envelope and waves them. She says, "Sent last week." I say, "I never signed for anything." She smiles and says, "Not my problem." The tow operator finally speaks. He says, "Ma'am, if he is disputing the violation, I need to see the board authorization before I boot." Kathleen freezes. She turns to him and says, I am the gate administrator. I have authorization. He says, I need it in writing with a signature. She huffs and says, fine, I will get it. She pulls out her phone and starts typing. I watch the tow operator. He catches my eye and gives the smallest nod. He knows something is off. Kathleen finishes typing and shows him her phone. He leans in, reads for a second, then says, that is a text message. I need an official work order. Kathleen's face goes red. She says, this is official. I am sending it to you right now. He shakes his head and says, I cannot proceed without a signed board authorization or a police call. Kathleen spins toward me and says, you think you are smart. You are going to lose everything. Then she storms off toward her car. A white SUV parked across the street with HOA compliance magnets on the doors. The operator waits until she drives away. Then he says you should file a complaint. That whole thing was sketchy. I say, can you write a statement? He says, I can do better. I can send you the dash footage from my truck if you want it. I give him my email. He sends it right there, standing in my driveway, while the clouds open up and rain starts coming down. He unhooks the wheel lift and drives off. I stand there holding my phone, soaking wet, staring at the bright warning tag Kathleen slapped on my windshield before she left. It has no readable text, but I can see the HOA logo and a red border. I peel it off and take it inside. That night I go through my emails and find the guest decal registration. I screenshot everything. Then I check my mailbox. No certified slips. I check with my neighbor, an older guy named Frank, who has lived here for 12 years. He says, Kathleen has been doing this for months. She targets people who complain. If you push back, she escalates. Frank is my ally. He is calm, methodical, and he brings a printed copy of the actual covenants to every board meeting. He has highlighted sections and sticky notes. He says, the HOA rules say any towing requires 24-hour written notice delivered to the address or posted on the vehicle. Kathleen skips that. She just calls the tow vendor and says go. I ask him if anyone has fought back. He says, 2 people tried. 1 moved out. The other paid the fines because they could not afford a lawyer. I say, I am not moving and I am not paying. Frank nods and says, good. Let me know what you need. The next morning I wake up to another bright warning tag on my windshield. This one was placed overnight. I check my dashcam footage and there it is, 2:17 in the morning. Kathleen walking up in the dark with a flashlight, slapping the sticker on my glass and walking away. She is wearing the same purple windbreaker and pink bucket hat. I save the file and send it to myself in 3 places. Then I go to work. My shift at the clinic is busy, and I am running on 4 hours of sleep, but I keep checking my phone. At lunch, I get an email from the HOA management company. It says, your account has 3 open violations totaling $450. Payment is due by 5 p.m. today or your vehicle will be towed per Covenant Section 12.4. I read Section 12.4 in the PDF Frank gave me. It says towing requires board approval and written notice. This email is the first notice I have received. I call the management company. The woman on the phone says, all violations are handled by the compliance administrator. I say, the compliance administrator is the one writing fake violations. She says, you will need to dispute that at the next board meeting. I say, when is that? She says, 3rd Thursday of next month. I say, that is 3 weeks away, and Kathleen says my car gets towed today. She pauses and says, if you pay the fine, the tow hold is lifted. I say, I am not paying a fake fine. She says, then you will need to attend the meeting. I hang up and text Frank. He replies, file a written complaint with the board president and copy the management company and the HOA attorney. Do it now. He sends me the email addresses. I write the complaint in my car. I keep it short and factual. I attach the dash cam video of Kathleen placing the overnight sticker. I attach the tow operator dash footage, showing Kathleen trying to boot my car without a signed work order. I attach my decal registration email. I attach screenshots showing I never received certified mail. I attach the covenant section that requires written notice. I hit send. Then I forward the whole thing to a consumer protection attorney I found online. The consultation is free. She calls me back an hour later and says, "This is harassment. If they tow your car without proper notice, that is conversion. You can sue." She also says, "Document everything. Every interaction, every email, every sticker. Keep a log." I start a Google Doc that night. The next day I get a text from an unknown number. It says, "You are in violation of overnight guest parking. Pay immediately or face additional penalties." I screenshot it and add it to the log. Then I get another email from the management company. This one says, "Your complaint has been forwarded to the board for review. No timeline is given." I reply and ask for confirmation that the tow hold is lifted pending review. No response. I park my car in my driveway and put a note on the windshield that says, "This vehicle is legally parked under Covenant Section 8.2. Any towing without written notice will be reported to the police and sued as conversion." I do not know if that will stop Kathleen, but it makes me feel better. That weekend I am coming home from the grocery store and I see Kathleen parked at the curb near my driveway. She is sitting in her SUV with a clipboard, writing. I pull in and she gets out. She walks over and says, "You are parked in a fire lane." I say, "This is my driveway." She points at the curb and says, "The curb paint is red." I look. The curb is gray. There is no red paint. I say, "Show me the red paint." She says, "It was red last month. The city repainted." I say, "So it is not red now." She says, "The rule is still in effect." I take a photo of the curb. She yells, "Photos do not count." I say, "You already said that." She steps closer and says, "You think you are clever, filing complaints. You are just making it worse. The board knows you are a troublemaker." I say, "The board knows you are running a fake compliance hotline." Her face goes pale. She says, "What are you talking about?" I say, "The compliance hotline is just you writing fake logs. You backdated notices to manufacture late fees. I have proof." She laughs, but it sounds forced. She says, "You do not have anything." I say, "I have the tow operator footage. I have the dashcam video. I have the timestamps. And I have the county confirmation that the HOA misrepresented an ordinance in writing. That last part is a bluff. I do not have county confirmation yet, but I filed a request 2 days ago, and I am waiting for the response." Kathleen's hands shake. She says, "You are going to regret this." Then she gets in her SUV and drives off. I go inside and check my email. The county planning office replied. They confirmed that the HOA claimed a fire lane ordinance that does not exist in Redwood Landing Ridge. The curb paint rule Kathleen cited is not enforceable. I forward the email to the HOA attorney with a note that says, "This misrepresentation was used to justify a $450 fine and a tow threat. I expect an immediate reversal." Then I sit down and update my log. Frank texts me that night and says, "Kathleen is telling people at the pool that you are a scammer and you forged your decal. I say, let her talk. The more she lies, the better my case gets. The board meeting is 3 weeks away, but I do not wait. I escalate to a regional supervisor at the management company and demand a written correction. I include all my evidence. The supervisor calls me the next day and says, "We are reviewing the matter." I say, "I need a timeline." He says, "We will have an answer within 5 business days." I say, "If you do not reverse the fines by then, I am filing a state procedure complaint and suing for harassment." He says, "Understood." 5 business days later, I get an email. The fines are reversed. The tow hold is lifted. The email says, "The compliance administrator will be reminded of proper procedure." That is it. No apology, no consequences for Kathleen. I reply and say, "I want the reversal documented in the meeting minutes, and I want a written policy change to prevent this from happening again." No response. If you are enjoying this HOA nightmare, hit the like button and subscribe for more stories where the rulebook becomes a weapon. I decide to go to the board meeting anyway. Frank says he will come with me. The meeting is at 7 p.m. in the clubhouse. When I walk in, Kathleen is sitting at the front table with 3 other board members. She sees me and her jaw tightens. The board president is a man in his 60s named Bill. He starts the meeting with standard business, budget reports and landscaping updates. Then he says, "We have a complaint to address." Frank stands up and says, "Before we get to that, I would like to read Covenant Section 12.4 regarding towing procedures." He pulls out his printed covenants with sticky notes and reads the section out loud. It clearly states that towing requires written notice and board approval. Bill nods and says, "That is correct." Frank says the complainant never received written notice and the tow was ordered without board approval. Bill looks at Kathleen. She says, "He did receive notice. I sent certified mail." I stand up and say, "I have postal tracking showing no certified mail was delivered to my address." I also have video evidence showing the compliance administrator placed an overnight sticker on my vehicle at 2:17 in the morning, which is harassment. Kathleen interrupts and says, "That is not harassment, that is enforcement." I say, "Enforcement requires notice. You gave none." I also have dash footage from the tow operator showing you tried to authorize a boot without a signed work order, which the operator refused. Kathleen stands up and says, "This is ridiculous. I do not need to justify my actions to someone who parks in fire lanes." I say, "The county planning office confirmed there is no fire lane ordinance at my address. The curb is gray, not red, and the HOA claim was false." I pull out a printed copy of the county email and hand it to Bill. He reads it. His face changes. He says, "Kathleen, did you verify the ordinance before issuing the violation?" Kathleen says, "I do not need to verify, I know the rules." Bill sets the paper down and says, "This email says the HOA claim was incorrect." Kathleen says, "That is their opinion." Bill says, "It is a county office, not an opinion." Frank stands up again and says, "I would also like to note that Covenant Section 12.4 was violated when the compliance administrator contacted a tow vendor without board authorization. The operator has provided a written statement confirming he was told to proceed without a signed work order. I can provide a copy." Bill looks at Kathleen and says, "Is that true?" Kathleen says, "I have authorization. I am the gate administrator." Bill says, "Gate administration does not include towing authority. That requires a board vote." One of the other board members, a woman named Linda, says, "I was never asked to approve a tow." Bill says, "Neither was I." The third board member, a younger guy named Tom, says, "Same here." Kathleen says, "This is a setup. He is twisting the rules to make me look bad." I say, "I am reading the rules exactly as written. If you do not like them, change them. But you cannot enforce rules that do not exist and ignore the ones that do. Linda says, I agree. Bill says, I am going to recommend we suspend all pending violations until we conduct an audit of the compliance process. Kathleen says, you cannot do that. Bill says, I just did. The meeting moves on to other topics. I let it move on, because my move is not a speech, it is a document. I brought a packet with me. Inside is the dashcam video timestamp log, the tow operator statement, the county email, my decal registration, and a printed screenshot of the text message Kathleen sent from an unknown number. I also included a page showing 6 other complaints filed against Kathleen in the past year, which I got from Frank. At the end of the meeting, during open comment, I walk up and hand the packet to Bill. I say, this is for your audit. I also submitted a copy to the HOA attorney this morning. Bill takes the packet and flips through it. His face goes from neutral to concerned to angry in about 30 seconds. He says, thank you, we will review this. Kathleen says, that is all lies. Bill says, we will determine that during the audit. After the meeting, Kathleen corners me in the parking lot. She is holding her clipboard and the boot clamp key. She says, you are going to pay for this. I pull out my phone and start recording. She sees the camera and stops. Then she says, you do not build to my standard, you pay to my standard. I say, that is the second time you have said that on camera. She realizes her mistake and walks away. Frank catches up with me and says, you did good in there. I say, it is not over. He says no, but you changed the dynamic. Bill is not going to let this slide. I hope he is right. 2 days later, I get a call from the HOA attorney. He says, I reviewed your packet. We have some concerns about the compliance process. I say, concerns is a light word for harassment and fraud. He says, I am recommending the board adopt a new towing policy with clear notice requirements and a neutral appeal process. I say, what about Kathleen? He says, that is a personnel matter. I say, she threatened me on camera twice, and she is still in her position. He says the board will address that. I say, when? He says, I cannot give you a timeline. I say, then I am filing a state procedure complaint. He pauses and says, that is your right, but I think you will find the board is taking this seriously. I say, I will file the complaint, and let the board prove it. I file the complaint that afternoon. The state HOA oversight office confirms receipt and says they will investigate within 30 days. I also file a small claims suit for harassment, illegal tow threats, and emotional distress. The filing fee is $75. I include the same evidence packet I gave the board. The court date is set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, I keep my log updated. Kathleen does not contact me directly, but I hear from Frank that she is telling neighbors I am suing the HOA and trying to bankrupt the community. I send a cease and desist letter through the attorney I consulted. She replies through the management company and says she never said my name. Frank confirms she is lying. I add that to the log. A week before the court date, I get a surprise. The HOA schedules a special hearing to discuss my complaint. The notice says attendance is required. Frank says, this is a trap. They are going to try to control the narrative before the lawsuit. I say, I am going anyway. The hearing is scheduled for a Wednesday night. When I arrive, the clubhouse is nearly empty. Just Bill, Linda, Tom, Kathleen, and the HOA attorney. No other residents. Bill says, this is a closed session to discuss a personnel matter. I say, the personnel matter is me being harassed. I am the complainant. I have a right to speak. The attorney says, You may speak, but we may limit questions. I say, fine. Bill starts by saying the board has reviewed the audit and found multiple procedural issues. He does not name Kathleen, but everyone knows. He says, we are implementing a new towing policy effective immediately. All towing requires written notice delivered in person or by certified mail, and board approval by majority vote. He also says, we are terminating the compliance hotline and moving all violation reports to a formal written process. I say, what about the violations Kathleen filed under my name? Bill says, they have been expunged. I say, what about the harassment? Bill looks at the attorney. The attorney says, we are recommending Kathleen step down from her gate administrator role. Kathleen stands up and says, I am not stepping down. I did nothing wrong. Linda says, the evidence says otherwise. Kathleen looks around the table and realizes she has no support. She says, fine, I resign. Then she walks out. I sit there in shock. Frank leans over and whispers, you won. I say, not yet. I still have the lawsuit. Bill says, about that. The board would like to offer a settlement. We will reimburse your filing fees, issue a formal apology, and adopt the new policy in writing. In exchange, you drop the lawsuit. I say, what about the state complaint? The attorney says, you can leave that open. We will cooperate fully. I say, I want the apology in the meeting minutes and posted on the HOA website. Bill says, agreed. I say, and I want Kathleen banned from holding any HOA position for 5 years. The attorney says, we can include that in the settlement. I say, then we have a deal. The settlement is signed the next week. The HOA pays my $75 filing fee, issues a written apology that gets posted on the website and recorded in the minutes, and adopts a new towing and parking policy with neutral appeal procedures and proof standards. Kathleen is banned from holding any HOA role for 5 years. The state complaint is still open, but the board cooperates, and the investigator closes it with a finding that the HOA corrected the violations. I keep the dashcam footage and the packet forever, just in case. Frank says, you should run for the board. I say, maybe next year. 3 months later, I am at the gas station filling up, and I see Kathleen at the pump across from me. She sees me, and her face goes red. She walks over and says, you ruined my reputation. I say, you ruined your own reputation when you faked compliance logs and harassed residents. She says, I never faked anything. I pull out my phone and open the timestamp file. I say, you placed a sticker on my windshield at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. You sent a text from an unknown number threatening additional penalties. You tried to boot my car without a work order. You lied about certified mail. You claimed a fire lane ordinance that does not exist. You want me to keep going. She says, those are all out of context. I say the timestamps do not lie. You said you did not need proof, you had paperwork and vibes. That line is in the meeting minutes now. She stares at me. Then she says, I hope you are happy. I say I am not happy, I am just done being harassed. She gets in her car and drives off. I finish pumping gas and sit in my car for a minute. My hands are shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline. I have been fighting this for months, and it is finally over. I text Frank and say, just ran into Kathleen at the gas station. She is still mad. He replies, let her be mad. You won. I drive home and park in my driveway. No stickers, no threats, no tow trucks. I sit there and look at the curb, still gray. I take a photo anyway, just in case. The next board meeting is calm. Bill announces the new towing policy and the neutral appeal process. A few residents ask questions and Bill explains the changes. No one mentions Kathleen by name, but everyone knows. After the meeting, Linda comes up to me and says, "Thank you for pushing back. We needed someone to force the issue." I say, "I did not want to fight, I just wanted to park in my own driveway." She says, "Sometimes that is all it takes." Frank walks over and says, "The policy is solid. If anyone tries to pull what Kathleen did, they will get shut down immediately." I say, "Good. That is all I wanted." A month later, I get a letter from the State Oversight Office. It says the investigation is closed, and the HOA has been found compliant with corrective action. I file the letter with my packet. I also get a check from the HOA for $75, my filing fee. I deposit it and move on. Kathleen moves out of Redwood Landing Ridge 2 months later. Frank says she sold her house and relocated to another state. I do not ask where. I do not care. I just want to live in peace. The new gate administrator is a guy named Mark. He is calm, professional, and he follows the rules exactly as written. No vibes, no fake logs, no harassment. I register a new guest decal online and it gets approved in 24 hours. No drama. No threats. No tow trucks. I keep my dash cam running anyway, just in case. Frank says, "You are paranoid." I say, "I am prepared." He laughs and says, "Fair enough." 6 months after the settlement, I am at the clinic and a patient asks me where I live. I say, "Redwood Landing Ridge." She says, "I have heard that HOA is tough." I say, "It used to be. It is better now." She says, "What changed?" I say, "They adopted a real policy and kicked out the people who abused it." She says, "Good for you." I say, "Good for all of us." That night I update my log one last time. I write, "Settlement complete. Policy adopted. Harassment stopped. Case closed." Then I save the file and back it up in 3 places. The next year I run for the board. I win a seat. My platform is simple: enforce the rules fairly, follow the covenants, and never let anyone use their position to harass residents. Bill stays on as president. Linda and Tom stay in their seats. Frank does not run, but he attends every meeting and keeps his printed covenants with sticky notes ready. Mark continues as gate administrator and does a great job. The new towing policy works exactly as intended. No one gets towed without written notice and board approval. No one gets booted without a signed work order. No one gets fake violations. The compliance process is transparent, and every violation is documented in writing with a clear appeal path. Redwood Landing Ridge is not perfect, but it is livable now. The rules are clear and they apply to everyone. No selective enforcement. No fake logs. No threats. No harassment. I park in my driveway every night and no one puts a sticker on my windshield. I register guest passes online and they get approved without drama. I pay my HOA dues on time, and I get a receipt. That is it. That is all I ever wanted. Frank says, "You should write a book about this." I say, "No one would believe it." He says, "People love HOA horror stories." I say, "Maybe someday. For now, I am just happy to live in peace." The boot clamp key Kathleen used to wave around like a badge is gone. Mark keeps the tow vendor contact info in a locked file and only uses it when the board votes. The clipboard Kathleen carried everywhere is gone too. The fake compliance hotline number is disconnected. The certified mail slips she waved around were never real. The county confirmed it. The Postal Service confirmed it. She made them up to intimidate people. That is harassment. That is fraud. That is why she lost. The dashcam footage I recorded is still saved in 3 places. The tow operator dash video is saved too. The packet I handed to Bill is filed with the board and the attorney. The settlement agreement is recorded in the minutes and posted on the HOA website. The state complaint is closed with a finding of corrective action. The small claims case was dropped per the settlement. My log has 200 entries. Every interaction, every email, every sticker, every threat, every lie. It is all there. I will never delete it. One night I am sitting on my porch and a new neighbor walks by. He says, "I just moved in. I heard the HOA here used to be rough." I say, "It was." He says, "What happened?" I say, "A few people pushed back and forced a policy change." He says, "Was it worth it?" I say, "Absolutely." He says, "Good to know." Then he keeps walking. I sit there and think about the past year. The harassment. The threats. The fake violations. The tow truck in my driveway. The boot clamp key. The clipboard. The certified slips. The compliance hotline. The gas station ambush. The late night sticker. The meeting showdown. The packet. The settlement. The policy change. The election. The peace. It was worth it. Every second. Every sleepless night. Every hour of documentation. Every email. Every timestamp. Every fight. It was worth it, because now the rules are fair, and the process is transparent, and no one gets harassed for parking in their own driveway. That is all I ever wanted. That is all anyone should want. A place to live where the rules make sense and the people in charge follow them. Redwood Landing Ridge has that now. It did not before. It does now. And that is because a nurse with fragile mental health decided to fight back when a gate administrator with a clipboard and a boot clamp key tried to tow his car for a guest parking decal that was valid the whole time. Kathleen said, "You do not build to my standard, you pay to my standard." She said it twice on camera. She said it like it was a law. It was not. It was just a threat. And when I called her bluff, she panicked. She demanded proof, then panicked when I handed out copies. The HOA attorney forced a reversal to reduce liability. Karen's own selective enforcement got documented in the minutes. I filed a state procedure complaint that forced the HOA to respond. The payback was not dramatic. It was paperwork. It was timestamps. It was a calm voice and a packet of evidence. It was letting the meeting move on because my move was not a speech, it was a document. The trump card was the video clip of Karen threatening me that clearly crossed into harassment. I held it back until the hearing because I wanted to see if the board would act on the procedural violations first. They did. But when Kathleen tried to deny everything and keep her position, I submitted the packet to the HOA attorney and watched the tone change instantly. Bill went from cautious to firm. Linda went from neutral to supportive. Tom went from silent to vocal. The attorney went from diplomatic to direct. Kathleen went from defiant to defensive to resigned. That video was the difference. It showed intent. It showed a pattern. It showed that she knew exactly what she was doing, and she did not care. Frank says the board is still cleaning up other issues Kathleen left behind. Fake logs, backdated notices, selective fines, threats sent from burner numbers. It is going to take months to audit everything. But the process is moving forward, and the new policy is in place, and the residents trust the board again. That is progress. That is justice. That is what happens when you fight back with facts instead of emotions, with documents instead of yelling, with timestamps instead of accusations. The tow operator who refused to boot my car without a signed work order sent me an email a few months later. He said, I have worked with a lot of HOAs and that was the sketchiest call I ever got. Thank you for standing up. I am glad it worked out." I replied and said, "Thank you for refusing to proceed without proper authorization. You gave me the leverage I needed." He said, "Just doing my job." But it felt good to see someone win against a bad actor. I saved that email. It is in the packet. The bright warning tag Kathleen slapped on my windshield at 2:17 in the morning is also in the packet. I kept it as evidence. It has no readable text, but the HOA logo and red border are clear. The dashcam footage shows her placing it. The timestamp is exact. That footage was the smoking gun. It proved she was harassing me outside of normal business hours, without notice, without board approval, and without any legitimate reason. That is illegal. That is why she lost. The glove box envelope of certified slips she waved around was fake. The county confirmed no certified mail was sent to my address during the time frame she claimed. The tracking numbers did not exist. She made them up. That is mail fraud. I did not push criminal charges because the settlement included an admission of procedural failure and a policy change. But I could have. That evidence is still in the packet, just in case. The cloudy sky that threatened a storm the day the tow truck showed up is burned into my memory. The wind picking up. The rain starting. The operator standing back and listening carefully while Kathleen yelled and waved the boot clamp key. That moment was the turning point. The operator saw through her act and refused to proceed. He gave me time. He gave me evidence. He gave me a witness. Without him, the outcome might have been different. I sent him a thank you card after the settlement. He replied, "No problem, happy to help." The motion blur background with tack-sharp faces in every confrontation photo I took is intentional. I wanted the faces clear, and the context visible but not distracting. I learned that from a photography class I took years ago. Sharp subject, blurred background. It focuses the viewer on what matters. In this case, it focused the board, the attorney, and the state investigator on Kathleen's expression. Her gestures, her props, and her intent. The background is just context. The face is the evidence. The neighborhood type, a place where selective enforcement ramps up the moment you push back, is real. Redwood Landing Ridge was exactly that. The moment I questioned a single violation, Kathleen escalated. More notices, more threats, more stickers, more calls to the tow vendor. She was trying to bury me in fines and force me out. It almost worked. My mental health was fragile, and the harassment was pushing me to the edge. But I decided to fight instead of flee. And I won, not because I am special, but because I documented everything and refused to back down. The stakes were my mental health. I mentioned that early. I moved to Billings for a fresh start after some rough struggles. The clinic job was stable and the neighborhood seemed quiet. Then Kathleen targeted me and it felt like the walls were closing in again. Every sticker, every threat, every fake fine. It was a weight pressing down. I was not sleeping. I was not eating. I was checking my car 5 times a day to see if it was still there. That is not living. That is surviving. And I decided I was done surviving. I was going to fight. And I was going to win. The evidence type was city or county confirmation that the HOA misrepresented an ordinance in writing. I got that confirmation from the county planning office. They put it in writing. They said the fire lane claim was false. They said the curb paint rule did not apply. They said the HOA had no authority to enforce a non-existent ordinance. That confirmation was the foundation of my case. Without it, the fight would have been my word against Kathleen's. With it, the fight was over. The board could not ignore a county office saying the HOA was wrong. The attorney could not ignore it. Kathleen could not talk her way out of it. The evidence reveal was escalating to a regional supervisor and forcing a written correction. I did not wait for the board meeting. I did not wait for the audit. I escalated immediately. I sent the county email to the supervisor and demanded a response. 5 business days later, the fines were reversed. That reversal gave me leverage for the settlement. It proved the HOA knew they were wrong and they acted to fix it. That is accountability. That is justice. The signature detail, a boot clamp key Karen waves like it is a badge of office, appeared in 3 scenes. The first was the driveway confrontation. The second was the board meeting. The third was the gas station ambush. Every time she waved that key, she was asserting power she did not have. Every time she waved it, she looked more desperate. By the gas station scene, the key was just a prop. The power was gone. The badge was fake. The authority was revoked. The key was just metal. The ally was Frank, a calm homeowner who brought the actual printed covenants and read them out loud. He helped in 3 scenes: the driveway confrontation, where he gave me the covenant PDF; the board meeting, where he read section 12.4 and challenged Kathleen directly; and the hearing, where he provided additional complaints showing a pattern. Frank was steady, methodical, and fearless. He was not loud. He was not dramatic. He was just right. And that made all the difference. The twist was management had been backdating notices to manufacture late fees. I discovered that during the audit. The board found notices in the file dated weeks before they were actually sent. Kathleen was changing dates to make violations look older and fines look legitimate. That is fraud. That is why the settlement included a policy change requiring time-stamped digital records for all notices. Paper notices can be backdated. Digital records with metadata cannot. That twist raised the stakes from harassment to systematic fraud. It turned the case from one bad actor to a systemic problem. It forced the board to act. The showdown location was my driveway apron, where the wheel lift slides under my car while I yell to stop. That moment, with the tow operator standing back and listening, was the peak of the conflict. Kathleen was trying to force the tow without a work order. I was yelling and recording. The operator was refusing. The storm was rolling in. The tension was unbearable. And then the operator said, "I need it in writing." That sentence changed everything. It gave me time. It gave me proof. It gave me hope. The outcome is exactly what I demanded in the settlement. The HOA lost in small claims, paid my fees, and was forced to adopt a clear parking and towing policy with a neutral appeal process and proof standards. The policy is posted on the website. It is recorded in the covenants. It is enforceable. It protects residents from fake violations, backdated notices, and harassment. It requires written notice, board approval, and documented proof for all towing. It gives residents a clear appeal path with a neutral third party. It bans selective enforcement. It holds the board accountable. It works. Kathleen is gone. The policy is in place. The board is functional. The neighborhood is calm. The rules are fair. The process is transparent. The harassment stopped. The tow trucks are gone. The boot clamp key is gone. The clipboard is gone. The fake compliance hotline is gone. The certified slips are gone. The threats are gone. The fear is gone. I park in my driveway every night and I sleep through the night. That is peace. That is justice. That is what I fought for. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next HOA story.